On a cold autumn evening, the sun had almost disappeared behind the skyline of New York City. People rushed through the streets, heads down, minds busy, hearts burdened. In the middle of this restless world sat a young man named Daniel Carter, clutching an old, torn notebook against his chest like it was the most valuable treasure he owned. The notebook wasn't shiny, it wasn't new, its edges were ripped, the ink had faded, and some pages looked so fragile that even a soft touch could tear them apart. To the eyes of strangers, it was just a piece of trash. But to Daniel, it was everything. Nobody in that crowded train knew what lived inside those faded pages. Nobody could imagine that a single secret, hidden for years in this worn-out notebook, had the power to change lives forever. Not just Daniel's life, but the lives of countless strangers he had never even met. And that secret was about to be revealed. A lonely beginning. Daniel wasn't born into comfort. Life had always been hard for him. His father disappeared when he was 6, and his mother struggled with 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. By the time Daniel turned 16, he had already learned what hunger felt like, what loneliness tasted like, and what it meant to stand in the middle of a crowd yet feel invisible. Despite all the pain, Daniel had one escape: writing. He wrote in that old notebook every single day. Stories, thoughts, poems, letters he never sent, dreams he wasn't sure he could ever reach. He wrote about love, about kindness, about the world he wished to see. But deep inside that notebook was also one page, one single entry, that he never shared with anyone. A page that carried a secret promise, a promise he made not to himself, but to humanity. The secret. Years ago, on one of the coldest nights of his childhood, Daniel had wandered outside because there wasn't enough heat in their apartment. He was shivering, hungry, and hopeless. That's when an old man, a complete stranger, noticed him sitting on the steps of a closed store. The man didn't ask for explanations. He didn't look away like the others. Instead, he handed Daniel a hot sandwich and his scarf, whispering, "The world changes when kindness is passed on. Promise me, one day, when you are able, you will pass this forward." That night, Daniel made a secret promise in his notebook. "One day, I will change someone's world with kindness, the same way a stranger changed mine." Life moves on. Years passed. Daniel grew up, graduated, and struggled through jobs that barely paid enough. He often thought of that promise but felt powerless. How could a man who could hardly help himself change someone else's world? Still, he never let go of the notebook. Then, one ordinary morning, everything changed. The day of the test. Daniel had lost his job the previous month. He had only a few dollars left and was worried about rent. On that particular day, as he sat in a coffee shop with his notebook open, he noticed a woman at the corner table, crying quietly into her hands. Most people ignored her, pretending not to see. But Daniel couldn't. Something inside him, the memory of that night years ago, wouldn't let him look away. He walked over gently and asked, "Are you okay?" At first, she didn't respond. Then, with tears streaming down, she whispered, "I just lost everything. My home, my job, I don't even know how to tell my little daughter we have nowhere to go tonight." Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to help, but what could he do? He had nothing. Nothing except his notebook. The choice. In that moment, Daniel remembered his secret promise. He flipped open his notebook and began tearing out page after page, his poems, his stories, his private dreams. He folded them carefully and handed them to the woman. Confused, she looked at him. "These are just words," she said softly. "No," Daniel replied. "These are pieces of my heart. When I had nothing, writing kept me alive. Maybe these words will give you strength tonight. And tomorrow, I'll find a way to help you." The woman held those pages like they were gold. And Daniel, he didn't stop there. That night, he sold the only thing of value he had left, his old guitar, for $100. He gave that money to the woman and her daughter so they could stay in a shelter. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The ripple effect. Months later, Daniel forgot about that encounter. He was still struggling, still chasing survival. Until one day, he received a letter in the mail. It was from the woman. Inside was a photo of her and her daughter, smiling in front of a small apartment. Along with it came a message. "Your kindness saved us when we were at our lowest. I took the words you gave me, your stories, and I read them every night to my daughter. They gave us hope. They reminded us that light exists even in the darkest times. I started sharing them online, and Daniel, people from around the world are reading your words now. They are inspiring thousands. Daniel's hands shook. He quickly searched her name on the internet, and froze. His private words, the ones he thought were too small to matter, had reached millions of people across the globe. His notebook, his secret, had become a movement of hope. The transformation. Soon, journalists began reaching out. Schools invited him to speak. Nonprofit organizations quoted his lines. Strangers sent him messages, saying his words had stopped them from giving up, from ending their lives, from losing faith in humanity. Daniel realized something he had never believed before. You don't need money, fame, or power to change the world. All you need is kindness, courage, and the will to share your heart. That one secret promise he had written years ago had finally been fulfilled. And it had changed everything, not just for him, not just for that woman and her daughter, but for countless souls across the world. The climax. Years later, Daniel stood on a stage in front of thousands. He held up the same torn notebook, now missing many pages, and said, "This isn't just a book. It's proof that one act of kindness, no matter how small, can echo further than we can ever imagine. The world doesn't change when we do something extraordinary. It changes when we do something simple, and pass it forward." The crowd rose to their feet, many with tears in their eyes. The ending, uplifting message. Daniel smiled as he closed the notebook one last time. The secret that once lived hidden inside had now touched millions. And with every act of kindness that followed, the ripple continued. He had learned that the greatest treasures in life are not money, fame, or possessions, but the moments when you give without expecting, love without limits, and believe that humanity, at its core, is still good. Because sometimes, one secret can truly change everything. Sparkle's message for audience. If you're carrying kindness in your heart, don't hide it. Share it, because your smallest act of compassion might just be the secret that changes someone's world forever.